was manning the station. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the September 10th, 2012 Washougal City Council Workshop Meeting. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Present.
Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Present.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here. Thank you. We're at our first point in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. You know, we have my esteemed colleague, Mayor Higgins, here from Camas, who I think has a couple things he would like to chat about. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening. Thank you for acknowledging me as your esteemed colleague. I appreciate that. It is my first time to be able to be before you all as the mayor of Camas, so it's kind of neat. I kind of enjoy seeing you this way. See a few new faces, at least one new from recent. So happy that things are going well. You know that we're real committed to partnerships, and I think a lot of our partnerships are going really, really well. The reason that I'm here tonight is to formally, first of all, tell you a story, and then formally invite you to continue to be a part of this, what I'm calling a success story. For about the last 6 to 8 months, oh, and by the way, Councilmember Greg Anderson is here with me as well. He's here to just keep me out of trouble. For the last 8 months or so, Greg and myself and Gary Larson and Jack Huber over at East County Fire and Rescue have been meeting very informally, once a month. And the whole purpose of this meeting is when I came on as mayor and we started kind of taking a pulse of that relationship, we saw that it wasn't what it should be, that there were ways for the relationship with Camas Fire and Rescue at the time, before it was Camas Washougal Fire and Rescue, and East County Fire and Rescue to really work better together. And it is my belief that that happens through strong leadership, and leaders that are elected and accountable get together and talk about things and make sure that if there's opportunities for staffing to improve on things or discussions to improve on things, they did. And so we have no agenda when we come together. We have nothing that's formal. We sit down and we just air our concerns and our questions and share feedback. And it's producing some good fruit. I mean, the dynamic between the four of us has really gotten stronger. There's a genuine trust and affection that's grown. And I'm bringing it up this week because at our last meeting, which was, I believe, last Monday, or maybe 2 Monday nights ago, the discussion was brought up by our friends at East County. Why don't we formally invite Washougal to participate in this very informal meeting? And so we would like, that's part of my reason I'm here, is to invite Mayor Gard and a council representative that is, I'm not sure exactly how you all do your committee things, but to just participate in that very informal meeting. It's all about building relationships. It's all about making sure that we're working together towards the common goal of providing the best service for our community. So we want to officially invite you to that, let you know that it's going well. In that particular meeting where the discussion came up to invite you all to kind of join in that, was also a really good discussion about the RFA. And I know there have been lots of different conversations and discussions about not only the work that Camas and Washougal are doing together, but also the potential to reach out further. And during that discussion, the two gentlemen representing ECFR at that time basically just communicated their support of the process. They're wanting to be seen as people who are supportive of to see how things can do in partnership together, and that not officially joining was a way they were going to go now, but participating with an eager voice and with maybe an eye towards if committee work ever is to take place in the current model, they would be willing to help and be participatory at that time. So I felt like it was a really good discussion and probably beneficial that both Camas's council and Washougal's council was aware that that was happening. So our group has been aware of that for a while. And we normally meet on, I believe, the fourth Monday in a month. But that was because it worked well for them and us. It may not work well for you guys, and so should you choose to accept, and I hope you will, we will find a night that works better for everyone. So,
You might stay for item number 6, our discussion of council meeting times and dates.
oh, is that right? Okay, well, I would love to stay, but I just,
Colts are
let's
behind.
see, what do I have to do?
Colts are behind.
Thank you all. I don't have a public meeting tonight, so I probably won't stay. I think there's a football game on. So anyway, you guys have a great meeting, and I hope you'll join us and maybe can communicate, Sean and I can communicate together and find out dates that work in the future. So, thank you.
Scott, thank you.
Thank you for
Very
coming.
much. Greg, thank you for being here. Are there other members of the public that would like to address council? Okay, we're going to dive into our presentations this evening. We have actually, and just so you know, through the agenda, you'll notice that Jennifer is not here again this evening. She had a family emergency today, so my apologies, but once again, we're going to push
Oh, okay.
her presentation on our quarterly update on finances off. We'd asked Dave to take that one over, and he pretty much said there's no way. So your agenda is going to be a little bit lighter this evening, but we do have Cheryl Bledsoe here from CRCA to talk to us, or excuse me, CRESA.
It's been a long time since we've been CRCA.
Sorry, it was
That's
just so
all
much
right.
easier.
It's a history.
Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you. It's my distinct pleasure to be here tonight. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Cheryl Bledsoe, and I'm the Emergency Management Division Manager at the Clark Regional Emergency Services Agency. So our agency provides 911 dispatch services along with emergency management and planning and exercise and training for first responders. So I'm here today in honor of National Preparedness Month, which is every September. In 2004, the President declared that September is the month that we focus on getting ready for disasters and emergencies that we face in all of the jurisdictions throughout the United States. So I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about some of the emergency management stuff that we're doing, some exciting stuff that's happening here in the eastern side of our county that CRESA is involved in, as well as open up any dialogue or discussion you want to have about emergency management or issues that might concern you as a council here in Washougal. So a few things. Our theme this year, the President always chooses the theme, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and this year it is Take a Pledge to Prepare. And they want general citizens and folks to really think about what they will do to ensure that they are better prepared to handle emergency situations. And not just the big disasters and the big emergencies, but the everyday crises that we face. From cars breaking down to unknown family things, we all stand to face something unknown and unthinkable in our futures in every year. So that's the pledge. There's several events that are happening around Clark County in order to celebrate this theme. The first one happens tomorrow, actually, over at East County Fire and Rescue, and that, of course, is the 9/11 Memorial. It's now 11 years since the tragic events of September 11th, 2001, and here in Clark County, there are actually 3 commemorations that are occurring. The spaghetti dinner tomorrow at East County Fire Rescue starts at 5:30 to 7, and they are having a memorial event at 8 o'clock. I believe a luminary thing starts at 7, as well as a ceremony that starts at 8. There will also be morning tributes that'll be happening at Clark Fire District 6, which is out in Hazeldale, as well as downtown at the City of Vancouver at their City Hall. Both events are sponsored by public safety agencies, and the public is welcome to attend. The Hazeldale event starts at 7:40 in the morning, and the City of Vancouver event starts at 8:40 tomorrow. Those are the different times at which the plane struck the buildings. So we really ask you to really think and take a moment of silence, at least to remember the victims and really where we've come over the last 11 years for national preparedness. Beyond that, on September 12th, Cascade Parks Library along Mill Plain is going to have a library event to really encourage citizens to get better prepared. There will be emergency managers on hand, both from my office as well as Clark County Public Health, and they are actually doing 4 different library events, one a week throughout this month of September. The focus is engaging with the community, answering their questions, and really working at sort of getting them over the hurdles of what it takes to prepare. Unfortunately, a lot of us act like ostriches. We know that an emergency is going to happen, but we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to talk about it because that might make it more likely to happen. And we really want folks to realize that it's an everyday thing. No one's perfectly prepared to encounter everything, but really you can do one simple thing each day or each month to get yourself better prepared to handle those emergencies. Along with that, Camas Fire is also having an open house on September 22nd. Cressa will also be present at that event. I believe it runs from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we send our public educators out to a number of open houses throughout September to engage with the public and show, kids how to talk to 911, as well as to get their families better prepared for emergencies. And finally, we're running an online game this year. Some of you have already heard about it, called 30 Days, 30 Ways. It actually is in its third year. We have played this game. We started in 2010 because I got very frustrated with National Preparedness Month. Emergency managers around the country are told to issue a press release and tell the public to get prepared. But the reality is people don't read press releases, and they really don't do much to get prepared even when you tell them to be prepared. So we decided on August 31st, 2010 to play a simple game and ask the public to do one simple thing a day for 30 days straight. They're easy tasks. They all take less than a minute, but it provoked 608 tasks to be completed in 2010. We played again in 2011, and 2,441 emergency preparedness tasks were completed. This year, I'm proud to say we are on day 10 of this game. We already have play in 26 states and in 7 countries, including France and Malta. It's pretty incredible. And the tasks are really easy. For example, yesterday's task to open up the NFL season was tell us what your favorite party snack is at an NFL game and how long it can sit out safely and be consumed. Getting people to think about, food safety and those types of issues that they might not think about when they're out at a party. The day before was your gas tank. How full is it? Is it over half a tank or under half a tank? Because the National Preparedness Guidance is to really have more than half a tank of your gas being full at all times. Today's task, a little more serious, was sheltering in place. If you had a hazardous materials spill that happened right outside this building right now, would you have the items necessary in this room to shelter in place until public safety responders told you that it was safe not to? And so we want to get people thinking and really kind of running in their head of how prepared they are if something happens that they aren't prepared for. So right now we've got play, like I said, in 26 states and 7 countries. We're very proud of the participation, and you have folks in your community right now playing. Every task takes less than a minute to answer, and so it's not too late to join the game. September 10th, we're only a third of the way in, and we hope that you will consider looking up the website. It's 30days30ways.com, very easy to find. We're on Facebook, we're also on Twitter, and you can also answer the tasks by email, which is important for those folks that are not on social media in this day and age. And finally, we want to talk to you about our community notification system. Cressa has, of course, we're the 911 agency. Most of the times, people call us for disaster response. But there are circumstances in which 911 might call you, and that is through our community notification system. And we, about 6 years ago, invested in a community notification system with the 4 counties of Clark County, Cowlitz, Wahkiakum, and Skamania. So all of the areas in those 4 county footprints can use a reverse 911 system or a community notification system. The limitations of this technology, however, are that landline phones are the only thing that's automatically included. If you have a cell phone or a voice over internet protocol or a digital phone, you have to self-register as a community member to have those phones included. Now, if you have a landline phone, then your landline address is hooked into that. But for the most part, I'd bet you all have cell phones, and I bet you'd all might be interested in alerts that might happen for buildings that you might be at often here in Washougal. So for example, residents can register their cell phone to their work address, so they would also get their work alerts as well. It's very important that your community members know that they have to sign up their phones. And in some cases, if you have voice over internet, you actually have to tell your voice over internet provider what your address is for that phone line. You can't simply call 911 and they automatically know your address. So it's very important to take the responsible action and figure out whether or not 911 can reach you. And there's 3 basic reasons we would want to call you. One is if we're telling you to stay in place, shelter in place, because something hazardous is happening around you. That's usually like a SWAT situation, like a hostage maybe negotiation, or a hazardous materials spill that needs you to stay indoors. Second reason we might call you is we need you to evacuate. The hazard is so severe, you need to get out of wherever you're at. And the third reason we might call is because something has happened in your location and we need your eyes and your ears to help us look for it. And that could be an endangered and missing adult, a kidnapped child, or a missing child, or some significant evidence in your area that might pose a danger to your community. So those are the 3 basic messages that we might call you with this system. So we encourage all of your residents and all of you to think about whether or not your phones are connected for an emergency. And with that, I'm open to answer any questions that you might have about emergency preparedness or emergency response.
The first question came to my mind was, how can you tell it's really 911 operator?
When we
A
call
lot of
you
pranksters
using
out there.
this, if you have a caller ID, it is going to say Clark 911 on it. And the other thing is you are going to receive a callback number that you can call back and verify with the same message
Good.
that you've just heard. Because a lot of people, the message can replay twice. People can hit one and listen to the message again, or they can call a number for validation. We will also, anytime we use this system, place information on our blog, our Facebook page, and through Flash Alert News, so you will know that an emergency alert has gone out in that area. Now, we're not going to use the system to notify the whole county, because there are phone switch limitations that would take us almost an hour and a half to call everyone in the county for a particular hazard. So these are often very geographically centered alerts, so this address and maybe a mile or a mile and a half around that address. And there are cases where that mile and a half might not go out to the public media based on the law enforcement sensitivity of the nature of the call. So if it's a bomb type situation or a SWAT type situation, we will talk with law enforcement, and law enforcement will advise whether or not they want the media alerts to go out in those situations.
Right,
So,
thank you.
great question. Other questions?
Is there a three-digit number that you can dial from a cell phone that will get you a location-specific emergency services?
Not at this point. What will happen right now if you dial 911 from your cell phone is that your cell phone will attempt to find the nearest cell phone towers in your area and will send you to that 911 center. So for example, in the Portland metropolitan area, you may dial 911 from a cell phone and end up in Portland. Now we all have phone switches that if we ask where you're at, and we always hope folks know their location, we will send you automatically over to the nearest dispatch center that will be able to handle the call. We also have what's called a computer-aided dispatch system right now, which allows Portland to enter the call information, and that goes automatically over to the CRESA side. They call it a message bus, where we all share information and it gets over to the center that it needs to. But there are some cases, depending on where you're at, there are separate dispatch agencies for State Patrol, and we just have good working relationships to get the information out where we need to.
That's interesting, because when I first went with AT&T a couple of years ago, they had a number, I believe it was 112, which would connect you to the nearest local 911 center.
I'm not aware of that at this. I mean, I can look into it and get back to you, but I'm not aware that that we actively
Appreciate
provide one.
any
Sure.
information you've got.
Absolutely.
When I went with Sprint last month,
Yeah.
doesn't work with them.
Yeah, and the other thing to know about 911 is it's really going through a significant transition right now with the whole next generation 911. The FCC has, of course, requires now that 911, the standards have been set, that 911 agencies will be able to receive text messaging as well as video and picture messaging. Unfortunately, the standards are in place, but the technology is not yet in place across the infrastructure. So over the next couple of years, there will be a lot of transition to how that works, both inside a dispatch world and outside in the community. So there's a lot of voice carriers and cell phone carriers that are in some massive transition right now, trying to make sure that their data can get properly to the 911 centers.
Okay, but if you dial 911, you're going to get a 911 operator
You should.
who will send you to the appropriate jurisdiction if you can tell them what it is.
Yes, or they will
Okay.
have your cell towers that will, depending how close you are in an urban area, and the cell towers, they can get a pretty specific location. But in some areas that are more remote or where the towers are more spread out, they get more of a broad-based area of where you're at, not a very specific pinpoint location. So it kind of depends where you're calling in from.
But if you can tell them the 911 service that you need, can they
Yes.
refer you?
Yes, indeed, absolutely.
Okay, so if we tell them CRESA, Clark County,
Yep, every dispatch agency in here around this area will know CRESA.
all right, thank you.
Absolutely. And I will get back to you on the 112. That's
I
a good
appreciate it.
question. Yeah.
Kind Joe?
Where is the nearest office?
The nearest CRESA office. We are located downtown at 710 West 13th Street, so right behind the county's Public Services Building. It's the actual only office we have in the downtown
really?
core. And there's towers, however, you'll probably see cell towers quite all over the place. We have 8 different site locations here. So, yes, other
Questions from council?
I was under the impression there was something at KMS Fire, a ceremony tomorrow
Tomorrow morning.
in the morning. Is that
Yep.
Was not on my
different?
radar, but if you're aware
Okay.
of one, that was.
That's right.
Yep,
Okay.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Very
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Cheryl, thank you very much. Okay, takes us on to new business. Our first item, community development, floodplain regulation clarifications. Mitch?
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. I am regrettably, sorry to be in front of you so soon with this. After we passed the last regulations, FEMA contacted me and said that they missed a few things. And so those are the proposals before you. The agenda bill before you is just to set a public hearing next week to address the items, and we will have a work session on the items, I believe, on the 1st. But they're not substantive in nature, or we're actually deleting one section that they had us put in.
Any questions from council before we move forward next week and then following with the public hearing?
I do. I have a quick question.
Yes.
So we just recently approved basically this whole thing, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, was it actually in effect yet? Or are we
It is
pulling
in effect.
Okay, it was in effect.
Yes.
So now we're amending it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it became effective on September 5th. That was the original ordinance. They assured me that we are still in compliance with FEMA and NFIP, but these are things that they would like us to fix.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Mayor, I'd just like to say, being someone who kind of deals with things like this is not at all unusual. These things happen all the time.
We weren't the only municipality locally that happened to.
Well, the other one I deal with wasn't, but we had some issues that did show up, but we were able to deal with those internally.
Thanks, Mitch. Finance, resolution adopting finance policy regarding bond financing. David.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'll be covering this item for Jen. As you'll recall, we recently refinanced some bonds to save the taxpayer some savings over the course of the life of those bonds. And in the process of closing up all the loose ends at the end of that, our bond counsel recommended to us that we pass a formal policy around our post-issuance compliance. We are not required to do this. However, as mentioned in the summary statement on the agenda bill, there is a form that we are required to file, an IRS form, and it has to do with the refunding bonds that we closed earlier this month. It's an informational form, and there is a box that can be checked on there that indicates whether or not you have a formal policy around post-issuance compliance. And according to our bond counsel, we would be in good stead if there were ever any issues to be able to affirmatively check that box, even though it's not required that we do so. And so he advised that we bring a policy to you so that we could affirmatively check that box, and crafted the policy for us, or just delivered that policy, and that's what you have in your packet as the resolution. I think it's important to point out that the adoption of this policy doesn't change anything that we currently do in practice, nor does it change any requirements upon us by the Fed or by by ourselves. It would just be formalizing what's already required and currently in practice. So next week, the recommended action will be to read the resolution by title only, and then to pass and post the resolution which adopts the policy.
Any council questions? Brent?
I have a question. I noticed there was some discussion here about management agreements. They might be a situation where it could jeopardize our tax exempt. Sorry, Rose. There might be a situation where a management agreement might jeopardize our tax exempt financing. And I'm familiar with that with some of the other situations we have. It's let's see, it's section 4, I think 4, under use of facilities, finance the proceeds on page 3 and 4. It says management, things that might jeopardize a tax exempt financing, sale, leasing, management contracts. What I was concerned about, or was thinking about in that situation, was the sewer public works things we are doing. Is that something that possibly could have the our program be considered a private use and then not allowable for tax-exempt financing.
It wouldn't be relevant to the bond refinance that brought this to our attention, but with respect to the other bond, the utility bond, the revenue bonds that we have, it's a different sort of debt instrument, so I'm not sure if that debt instrument would be subject to this policy. I'd have to evaluate that. But certainly, I see where you're reading, Councilman, and there's an IRS prohibition around some things, and it makes a list of different things, so I'll have to evaluate that.
If a bond is issued and it ends up financing a program that is not public use, it's not eligible for tax-exempt financing. There's a 10% rule in there that allows up to 10% private use in most financings, but if it's more than 10%, it's determined to be a private use and it loses its tax-exempt status, and then basically the people that bought the bonds are having to pay taxes on their interest.
Right.
And that's not a good thing when that happens.
No, then the whole purpose of the instrument.
That's right.
And the rate that it was marketed at.
Right. And that's a serious problem when that happens. So I guess what I'm saying is if when you get down the line on the sewer stuff, and of course our bond counsel would look at this.
Right.
And look at a management contract if we do use a private company to operate it, whether that would be jeopardize the
that void the
tax-exempt
status.
That's what I'm pointing out.
Right.
Here.
And that situation exists today. Your adoption of this policy doesn't impose that scenario. It already exists. This is just a formalization and an acknowledgement of that. Do you know, Councilman, perhaps if the bonds that have funded Marine Park and their facility there were tax exempt or not?
I believe they were.
They were tax exempt. Okay. Well, we will certainly research that and report back.
And the other thing I'd point out is just on our current practice, I've had some recent experience with Emma. Are you familiar with Emma? It's where you disclose your financial statements on bonds, on your in any kind of material events. I'll talk to you offline on that.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm taking up too much time here for. I'm interested in the city, how the city finances their projects. And sorry, council.
You're fine.
Anytime. Just let me know when you want to chat about it.
Council member brought up an interesting question. How about the social services building, which is operated under contract?
State public service.
Yeah, but they're a tax-exempt charity. They're not a public entity. On the other hand, the library is a public entity. We don't have any bonds on the existing library, but it's something that we would need to think about given our desire to have a new library. So I'm just curious what the impacts would be.
Yeah, I mean, on its face, it sure seems like very broadly scoped implications, yet I'm aware of tax-exempt financed situations where there are third-party contracts, and I'm not aware that there was a revocation or whatever the mechanism would be of that status. So it certainly begs investigation so that we can be fully informed about that.
There has to be a certain broad character to it because there are a lot of urban development bonds that were sold as tax-exempt bonds that were used to acquire property, to assemble development property, which was then either sold or long-term leased to a developer.
Other questions from council? Okay. Ken will be here to give us some answers next week.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we have information on that point next time.
Discussion item for you for this evening, council meeting times. Dave, do you want to take the lead on that one?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Council, we have a discussion item now regarding council meeting times as well as your meeting formats, particularly with respect to workshops. And as you know, we've had a couple of opportunities to discuss this already and had some good council discussion about the viability of moving to a 2-meeting per month calendar as opposed to a 4-meeting per month calendar. And this presentation will discuss a proposal to do just that, to move to a 2-meeting per month calendar, as well as some proposals regarding how we do workshops, what we do with the workshops in terms of the packets and the process. And when we have that part of the conversation, we'll have a little bit of conversation about the background and then what the proposed approach is, and then hopefully opportunity for council discussion and then direction back to staff so that we can prepare the changes as appropriate. So the proposed meeting schedule, and this is, discussion. I don't have a resolution prepared to change your rules or anything, but this stems from our conversation the last time that a 2-meeting per month schedule being 2nd and 4th week as opposed to 1st and 3rd week seemed to be a consensus among some of the council members, but there was no real consensus, as you'll recall. So for the sake of council discussion, I'm proposing 2nd and 4th. You'll note that it says except December, and in December it's proposing 3 meetings. And the reason for this is there would be, I think, a fairly serious implication of moving to 2nd and 4th, and that would be that every December your last action agenda would be really caught up in that holiday time frame. And in fact, it'd be Christmas Eve or even that close. And I think typically we look to not have that meeting. But it would, I don't think, be prudent to limit ourselves to 1 action meeting in December because we are trying to tie up the year's business, including your budget, and depending upon what's necessary, a couple meetings would be necessary. So to accommodate that 2nd and 4th approach in December, there's this nuance of meeting 3 times regularly in December so that we just make sure that we can cover our bases. This would not be an issue if you met on 1st and 3rd. Mondays as opposed to 2nd and 4th. So that there's an easy fix to that, and that's to do 1st and 3rd. There is the proposal would be to be in workshop and regular meeting both times, 4:30 to 6 for your workshop, then with a break, and then meeting at 7. Again, these are just time frame proposals. There's nothing specific about the length of that break. That break could be shorter. The workshop could then be longer, or not, and the regular meeting could be start sooner, but it seemed like an hour might be an appropriate break for folks to be able to get dinner. As we do now, if there is a meeting that would fall on a Monday holiday, which happens from time to time, the council rules have us meeting on the Tuesday so that we can continue to do the city's business. On 2nd and 4th, that would likely conflict with the Planning Commission. Mitch has assured me that the Planning Commission can be adaptable on those infrequent times where that would occur and meet at a different time. So if you're inclined to look at 2nd and 4ths, these are the consequences of that, but I think they're easily remedied based on this proposal. So if we were to do this and move to 2 times per month, there's some implications for that. We talked briefly about some of those implications at our last workshop, and that has to do with how we conduct our workshops and what we do with our workshops. And just by way of background, as you know, in your council rules of procedure at section 2.4, there's a purpose that is stated for your workshops. And without citing it specifically here, I just grabbed some bullets out, but it states that the council shall meet informally in workshop to do 4 things: review forthcoming programs of the city, receive progress reports on current programs or projects, receive other similar information from city department heads, and conduct procedures workshops. So those are the specific purposes of your workshop as prescribed in your rules. And as you also know, there is no specific agenda prescribed in the rules other than that there be 2 opportunities for public comment, and it points to one being early in the meeting and then one being late in the meeting, and that's what we currently do. As you know, we use our workshop primarily differently from the stated purpose in your rules. Over time here, the last couple of years, the process that we have now really uses the workshop as we did tonight to walk through what your action agenda will be at your action meeting the next time. And the adjustment to the approach that we currently have happened early in 2010 for a variety of reasons, and we've just maintained that now to the current point. Moving to a twice monthly meeting as opposed to the process that we currently have now would just add some real complications to continuing to work in that process. And so what is being proposed is to change how we approach our workshops. And the proposal would be to discontinue the primary use of our workshops as a walkthrough for the next action agenda. We would also revert back to practice that was prior to the current practice, and that is wouldn't necessarily be a formal packet like you received tonight, which is a walkthrough of your next action meeting. So there wouldn't be a formal packet. However, there might be packet information that would be provided for a workshop for various presentations or reports or discussion items as appropriate so that you have information. This would come with our commitment that we would not seek council action at an action meeting on an item that we did not bring to you for adequate opportunity for a workshop or multiple workshop conversations. And just a comment here, this overall proposed approach, I believe, is a fairly standard approach that's taken by councils. Councilman Boger might attest to this being the approach that's used at the City of Vancouver. And I wanted to mention that earlier today, I had the opportunity to have conversation with council members McDaniel and Greenlee, and then also with council member Shoemaker. We were talking on another item, and I thought while we were chatting I would bring this. But council members Greenlee and McDaniel, as you know, are uniquely situated among the council in that they have tenure prior to our current process and have experience working through workshop agendas when this was the approach that was taken, and then have had tenure now, of course, over the last couple of years or so where this approach has been used. And I thought, you know, their input to me as I was preparing this presentation would be particularly insightful for me because they had that unique perspective. But I wanted you all to know that I did have those conversations earlier today, and I appreciate the feedback that I was provided. So how would this potentially work in detail? Right now, as you know, we have consent on your action, and we have minutes, our AP proclamations. They come on to an agenda, and there's been no workshop on those particular items, and so of course we would continue to do that. We're proposing that final plats don't have too many of those right now, but we hope that someday maybe we'll see more of those. It's an interesting animal in the statute that mayoral signature on a final plat requires the authorization of the legislative body. It happens at the county commission, it happens at city councils, yet there is no discretion. If the conditions of the plat are met and they built the roads and put in the sewer, you have to approve the final plat. Yet we go through this, authorize the mayor to sign the final plat. And despite staff attempts here and my own in Vancouver, the attorney's always advised, as Brent can attest to, that you need to bring that, but there really is nothing to do. So we would propose that that shows up on consent when the final plat is ready, and it keeps the development wheels turning. A new nuance that we would have, it's similar to what happens in Camas, and it can happen in other communities where workshops are happening the same night as a regular meeting. There may be some so-called routine type action where perhaps some conversation in the workshop at 4:30 on a particular item would be sufficient for then council's action immediately following at the regular meeting. For example, tonight you heard about next week being asked to set a public hearing. When you set the hearing, you're not taking any action other than to allow the public the opportunity to come in and for you to hear from the public and to get a staff report at that time from the staff. We think that it would be appropriate for, if this was one of the new meetings tonight, for example, where we just finished the workshop, maybe we're going to have our regular meeting. Mitch tells you about this hearing that needs to be set at the workshop if you have any questions, and then at the regular meeting you go ahead and set the hearing. Sometimes there'll be a resolution or an ordinance that needs some cleanup, and it might not need a public hearing. So just like what Mitch has tonight, again, he's a good example tonight. There's nothing substantive changing. Taking up council time in multiple weeks may not be the most efficient use of your time. And so if there was something like that, and it will happen from time to time, we could see that being a same-day type scenario. If there was an emergency and we needed to get something done and we didn't have time to have prior week type workshops, we could do that. Another item I added here, just to see what the council would think about that, is there's some routine business that we do, annual types of routine agreements that we really don't have a choice but to be part of, and they require council action. Perhaps that could be something we could do in that way as well. Not as significant there. But just about everything else that you do, we would be having one or more workshops prior to your action night. And things, all the other things that you do, such as ordinances and resolutions where you're making substantive policy changes of your own initiative or by some mandate. All of our planning documents that we adopt, of course your budget or any supplemental budgets, agreements that are more than $40,000 or that the mayor decides to bring forward. And I'm sure there are other examples of actions that you might have to take that I just didn't think of putting this presentation together. We would have multiple opportunities, at least one, prior to your action meeting where we would workshop those. Kind of like what we're doing tonight, having a workshop in discussion mode. There's no resolution ready yet. Then you give feedback to the staff and then we come forward. This is in large part likely what it was like in the prior method, and is something that I'm familiar with in other communities. We also had some conversation about the actual setting that we use for the workshop. As you know, because of some issues with our AV system and wanting to make sure that all of our constituents that want to participate are able to, by being able to hear everything that's going on. We're situated like this now. We departed from the more informal setting where we had the table out front. I've definitely heard from some of the council that, you know, you wish we could still do that. That's a topic that can still be on the table. I just wanted to report that we are working on updating our AV system. Jennifer is working on that. I will say it's not her highest priority given, you know, the audit coming through or other issues, and but we do have some funds for that, as you know, and we hope to do that as soon as we can, and then we could re-engage a conversation about what setting you would prefer to have for your workshops. So that is the proposal for discussion. And if it would be the council's pleasure to move in that direction or something like that, how would we make this happen? What would this entail? First, we'd have to determine when to transition from a 4 times per month to a 2 times per month meeting schedule. So it's obviously going to require a couple back-to-back meetings or a gap between meetings. And I would say that if we started on October 22nd, for example, later this month, we could have a workshop where you could take a look very specifically at how this would be worded in your resolution. I think it would be very straightforward to do it. You could approve it the subsequent week. We would stay on our regular schedule and have a workshop-only meeting on October 8th. We'd have just a meeting on October 15th, and that would be your last meeting under the current council rules. And then you'd go back to a combo workshop and meeting on the 22nd. That'd be your first combined one, and then the next combined one would be November 13th, which I'll just point out is a Tuesday because I believe Veterans Day is on Sunday, and I think we'll be closed on the Monday. I believe that's the case. This is just one example of how we could do it. You could wait until the first of the year, and we could make the transition then. We could try to do it sooner. It's really up to you. But we believe that we can accommodate 2 times per month. And we believe that with the adjustments in our workshop practices that we can continue to get the city's business done and make sure that we engage in good policy discussion at the council when it's necessary. And that is the proposal for your consideration.
Council, Joyce?
If you get the sound system that's better, and you can put the table out there for the workshop, would you do that even though we're combining the workshop and the meeting? Or would we be playing musical chairs? How would that work?
Well, there'd be a break, and I think after the break we'd go into formal. So yeah, it would take us about 10 minutes to break it down, probably 5-10 minutes. It wouldn't be a big deal. The staff would take care of that for you.
The time of day we would meet, 4:30. Do we need an hour and a half for work sessions, do you think? Or could we do it at 5 and then go into the break if we need a little bit more time? Because we could have a workshop at 4:30, be done at 5, and then we have 2 hours before the meeting starts.
If we were to advance this different approach for workshops, I think what you might find is that you would see more updates, more policy conversations on different issues coming forward that potentially, in half-hour slots, if you would, and we'd be scheduling department heads out or programs out for that, and where we would probably have things that we could do in those 90 minutes, but it's not magic. We can certainly adjust it to a 60-minute approach. There would be times where that would be really inadequate. I can think of significant decisions the council needs to make a couple different times during the year where you would want to have much more time for that. I'm sure you can all remember some really busy workshop nights that we've had, particularly as we get close to the end of the year, and we'll do our best to meter that out a little better, but so we could start at 5 and go to 6:30 and break until 7. I mean, I would assume that one of the things you would want to talk about is what about dinner? And what does that mean for everybody? And is that something we're taking care of, sort of, or how are we doing that? Does everybody go to Papa's, or so could do 5 to 6:30, 5 to 6.
I don't have any magic, but there might be situations. I've seen workshops since in my brief time here that have gone for half an hour.
Right.
Would there be the flexibility of moving it to 5 when it's going to be, when it's going to be short? I mean, just to, depending upon the circumstances of that particular evening's agenda.
That would be a possibility. I know it's been our practice to be able to have a standing time that the community can count on. But if there was an adjustment to that, we could provide notice. There's a risk that someone wouldn't have received it and would come half hour early.
Dave, you've convinced me. I mean, I'm happy to go with the proposal you've submitted. That was just one thing that, if we could have some flexibility there, but I'm happy with what you've done. I think it's very good. I would be inclined to support it.
I think your question's a good one, though, Councilmember, and I think it's just a question among the members here, how long you all would want for a dinner break in there or whatever it happened to be. That's really what it comes down to, how you adjust the schedule. Couldn't you?
I just know my experience with C-Tran is that a staff person, sometimes they'll ask us or submit a menu and we'll place an order. Other times they'll just provide something. And whether we need to pay for that, I don't have a problem with paying for my own dinner, but having it in a room, getting to go in there, you can do that in 30 minutes and have a short break. It happens every month with them, and it's very successful that way. It's pretty simple. I like the idea of starting maybe a half hour later, allowing the hour and a half for workshop, and having just a half-hour break on site. Efficient and maintaining that time.
Jennifer?
I don't have a problem with either the 4:30 or the 5 o'clock time frame. There's pluses and minuses to both. If we make it 5 o'clock, then I would think that would be easier for the public to attend, because that's, similar to, average working hours. So at least maybe they could slip in a little late or whatever. If it's 4:30, then it might be a little tough. I'd have to take off work earlier, so on and so forth. As far as the food is concerned, I'm fine either way too, but to ask the staff to have food ready for us and to break down the tables, and
it was actually catered by C-Tran, has someone catering it, so the staff doesn't have to do it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm assuming they probably have to have it arranged, though, at least call ahead of time or whatever.
Yes.
But, okay.
They oftentimes don't give us a choice. In fact, once out of the whole, since January, did they give us a choice?
Right.
Just provided by a caterer.
Right.
Whether, instead of going to Papa's, have Papa bring it. And
Yeah. That's a thought, too.
It's all those details.
It is. Like, we couldn't use that room, during an audit. We'd have to think of something, an alternate or, something like that. So, I don't know. There's a lot of pluses and minuses. As far as the format, I don't have a problem working this way. As I mentioned earlier on the telephone with Dave, I can work this way. My only concern is that can the staff work this way? Because it's so different than what they're used to doing. So it's all about being prepared and working differently. And I do think that you're going to see a lot more, Councilman Boger, you're going to see a lot more hour-and-a-half to 2-hour workshops, because that's when we do, we have a lot of presentations. People come in and present information to us, and we have to fit that in somehow, as well as our agenda items and public comments. And, if it's a hot-button issue, we're going to have to limit public comments, and it's going to be, potentially a long night. So, and I do want it to stay at a certain time, especially if we're going to advertise it and, people are going to make plans to be here. I wouldn't want to change that time, at the last minute for some reason, unless it was an emergency. The 2nd and the 4th, I assume you chose those Mondays because Camas is 1st and 3rd, or I wasn't really sure how that came about.
Yes, that was one of the reasons why I think there were some council members that had asserted 2nd and 4th as a possible preference. Otherwise, nothing, no specific reason.
Right. Okay. Well, then that is one of the issues I brought up last time is that, if we decide to have a joint meeting with Camas, then one or the other of us has to call a special meeting in order for all of us to get together on that Monday evening. So
that's correct.
That's all I have.
Dave?
I'm generally in favor of what you're proposing. I like the idea of the staff, one, not having to prepare 2 sets of materials for each issue for different meetings, a workshop and a council meeting. that cuts the load on the staff. They can then spend the time getting ready for their presentations to talk about the issue, which I think will be to their advantage and our advantage. I do have two concerns. One of them is that we don't workshop an issue and an hour later put it to a vote. I like the idea of the staff being able to get council comment on their ideas that they bring forward and have a chance to work them through and bring us back a presentation the following time which addresses any concerns that were raised by the council. The other concern I've got is having enough time to get something to eat because going from 4:30 until 10 o'clock at night based on lunch seems a little long to me. And I am concerned about having the taxpayer pay for our meals. I think we're in a period of austerity, and I sure don't want to see that done. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Joyce?
But thanks for bringing this forward.
I haven't any experience with any other format, but it seems to me on a hot issue or something that is taking long time, it's a very, very long evening. It could be 4 or 5 hours, which for us that come in fresh is one thing, but that's putting staff into, I would think, an imposition. And I'm also concerned if you set the time constraints too rigid, then you aren't going to have, we won't have time, or the public won't have time to discuss issues that they think need to be discussed. That's kind of where my thought is right now, so I'm not sure how I feel.
Paul?
Workshops 4 and 5 years ago were very different. For one thing, they were scheduled to last 2 hours. And there was always plenty of stuff in the workshop to last the 2 hours. Maybe it was 1 hour 45, maybe it was 2 hours, but we didn't have any 25-minute workshops. We may have had 25-minute council meetings, but even those were much more rare. Council meetings, because of the way we're doing things now, staff puts together, in effect, a final proposal, which we then, to some degree, are rather grade it, like as if we were teachers, and find mistakes or correct it. And then a week later, we vote on it. In a big way, I think we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. One of the things that got me thinking this way actually is when Joyce and Connie Jo wanted to talk about what they wanted to accomplish on council, what their visions were, in effect. Because that's something that we used to talk about. We could sit around and talk about, one of the issues for wastewater treatment is what do you do with the solids that are left over? And there's a couple of different things you can do, but the short of it is that you can figure out a way to apply it. You can, in Class B solids, which are not really safe for like vegetable gardens, or you can go all the way to Class A solids, which are safe for gardens and lawns. How do you do that? Well, you can incinerate it, or you can, I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail, but we spent several meetings discussing how we felt about the various possibilities on how to look at that and how to deal with that. What's missing here is we're not just grading papers. We're not, this is not You know, in some degree, when something comes before the United States Senate for a vote, it's fully vetted. You're going to vote aye or nay, and that's it. There's not really any discussion or any thought about it. And I would hate to see us go in that direction, because in a large way, we represent not only a skill set in terms of saying aye or nay, or this needs to be changed or that needs to be changed, but we're also a very diverse group. And we represent the hopes and the aspirations of all of the people who live in Washougal. And we haven't been able to talk about that. And that has been what has been missing from our workshop format. It used to be, admittedly, that when we had workshops, first it started at 4:30 and then eventually at 5, that we would go weeks and weeks and weeks with no public attendance. Staff and council and mayor only. There was no public that ever showed up. And I think part of the reason, frankly, was with a 4:30 start time, if you have a job, you can't. And not only that, we actually got to the point that we're worrying that we were excluding people from running for council that had jobs that kept them at work. And that didn't seem right either. So I personally am not in favor of 2 meetings a month. I would like us to see, I would personally would like us to go back to one of the advantages of the roundtable format was that we didn't sit council on one side and staff on the other and public over there. Staff and council and occasionally people who were making public testimony were all mixed in around the roundtable. And not only that, but the chairs were kind of spread around the round table. It wasn't public over there and the table here. There was a bit more round table character to it because of the AV controls and where all that stuff. Now, it's true, we did have, the screen was over here, but most of the stuff that needed control was over there, so you tended to put the table more over there and have more public chairs here, so it was more U-shaped than really in the round. But that whole format really encouraged people to kind of take your coat off and roll up your sleeves and sit around and talk about the future of the city. Probably pull down your tie, too. And that's missing. It's been a long time since we've been able to do that.
May I address your comments?
Sure. Well, okay.
I'm just wondering, you know, I'm new, and I wasn't around at that time. Why aren't we welcome? I mean, just because we're in this shape, does that the shape of our chairs don't affect our conversation? So, in your opinion, I want you to share with me why this current council doesn't get to have the type of conversations that you had in the past.
I disagree with your premise. I think the shape of the chair has everything to do with it. That, I mean, there's this wonderful book by Michael, I can't remember, I was going to say Michael Korda, I'm not sure that's who it was. But he talked about the arrangement of offices and power spaces. And that one of the more fascinating pieces of management information is that it's much easier to completely rearrange an entire corporation by moving everyone around than it is to move one desk from here to that corner, because it changes the pecking order in a very narrow way. The simple fact that the staff are over there and we're over here and the public is over there changes things. It really does.
Well, I'm not opposed to that
And
roundtable by any means. thought you were saying that we weren't able to engage because of that. And I feel like we have had great conversations and a lot more to come.
And I'm just saying that round table, there's a reason that when the negotiations get tough, you go to a round table rather than.
Are the Roberts Rules of Order still in play? You call on folks and.
Not nearly as much. It was a lot
saying,
more
yeah.
informal in those workshops. The mayor was still the chair, no doubt about that, the presiding officer. But the discussions tended to be a lot more free-ranging. On the issue of food, we did used to, since they started and you would work through the dinner hour, the city did provide food, but what we're talking about is cold cuts from Safeway. And staff would arrange that. I mean, maybe it was from what was then the Country Cupboard, now the Evergreen Pieway. We probably had pizza from, there used to be a pizza place over in Evergreen Shopping Center kind of next to Subway. But Quiznos would be kind of in line with the kind of catering that we did for those meetings. I'm ambivalent about that, but then the other thing is that for a workshop to be really relaxed and people to kind of think about things beyond the kind of cross the T's and dot the I's, if you're going to take a little bigger vision than that, it's also good that you're not, as I said, in a coat and tie and buttoned up, but then I've also long felt, and I don't think I've said to this group, but in the past have said that people ask me why I wore a coat and tie all the time, and I said, I was raised in a time where you showed respect, and we are in the sanctuary of our government. And I would show respect to this sanctuary in the same way that I would any other. And so I think, there's a completely different mindset between a workshop and a council meeting. The council meeting is very formal, and you're trying to make a presentation there. That said, as I mentioned earlier, I think we were 4 and 5 years ago much more willing to amend things and discuss them in a council meeting than we have been here. We want it fully vetted before it comes to us so we can basically vote yay or nay and go on to the next thing. There have been exceptions to that, of course, but it's probably ironic for me to be saying this just now, but it's a little too buttoned down for me. That's it.
Other council? Karen?
So in regards to the, would we be able to stagger the workshops? So like if there was a workshop and a meeting on the same night, would the meeting stuff, we'd be deciding on prior workshop stuff, not what we had just talked about?
Typically, yes.
Typically, and except special stuff, right? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Right. The one difference that you would see is, for example, on a second to Monday, there would be a packet for your action agenda, your meeting. The workshop, there wouldn't be a packet. There'd be an agenda, but there wouldn't be a packet. Now, there might be some information, presentations, reports that would be part of the conversation, and they'd be in your Dropbox, for example, and out on the table. But you wouldn't have an agenda bill already prepared, a full underlined strikeout version of resolutions or ordinances, all fully prepared in basically a dry run or a draft of the fourth Monday's action meeting. That you would get that on the fourth Monday as part of the packet for that, the week, end of the week prior to that. However, we will have had for those substantive items where you're making some kind of a policy decision, we would have had at least one workshop where the council worked through that and provided their feedback and direction to the staff, so that when it does come in your action packet, it's not a surprise to you.
Okay.
But it would be a little bit different in terms of how you see it coming to you.
Okay. I just obviously value that time in between workshop and making a decision. I like the current format that we have. I am enticed, obviously, by the 2 meetings a month, just so I could get, you know, involved in other things, just because I have other little obligations at my house. So, so yeah, it does entice me, just only because I would like to do more. And then I guess as for the food thing, I think it would be neat if we all took a meeting and, like, I took the first one and I bought all the dinner for everybody, and then we could just rotate. Of course, from a Washougal business. So that was my thoughts.
Brent?
My thought is Parkinson's Law. You familiar with Parkinson's Law? Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. And I look at Camas, a city that's a little bigger than Washougal. They get by with 2 meetings a month. Vancouver, a city that's more than 10 times the size of Washougal, actually meets slightly less than Washougal does, because if there's a Monday holiday, they don't meet that week. So I don't see why Washougal needs to have 4 meetings a week. And I do agree with Councilman Greenlee on more need for more dialogue with the public. I would support something like a quarterly Saturday retreat, where the council comes in and talks about certain issues, or lets the public come in and bring forward issues that are of concern of them, and we would just devote Saturday, because I don't know that these evening meetings lend themselves to a great deal of in-depth discussion with the public, as would a Saturday meeting. So that would be something we could supplement this with, perhaps, to deal with that. We could also make that a very informal meeting, sitting around a table. I think that's more of a logistical IT problem now, more than anything else. I agree that we should make workshops more informal. So I'm fully supportive of your proposal. I think that's where we need to go.
Paul?
Just one quick thing that I kind of left off was that part of the format of the 2-hour workshop was that every single department head was there, and the meeting may have been dominated by Public Works, but every department head gave a little 5-minute update on what was going on in the city. And I know, because other people have mentioned it to me about their own situation, but myself, I felt better informed. When somebody comes up to me and says, what's going on up on 40th Street? And I don't know, I'm embarrassed, because I think I should know what's going on in my city. And the fact that we had department heads giving us a little update on what was coming up every other week helped that out a lot. I mean, it's a small thing and maybe very personal, but.
Okay, Joe?
Paul, it just seems like maybe some things have slipped away, and that whether we meet twice a month or whether we meet in the round, those things can return. If it's something that we wish for and staff can provide. So I think we could start making a list of what we'd like to see it look like. I don't know, again, as a new person, I just sort of fell into the routine of what's happening. If you, I almost called you old-timers. Wow, I could get in a lot of trouble. If you experienced council members, more experienced council members can share those. Let's talk about enlarging our borders here and conversations and whatever it takes. And I have a question for Administrator Scott. I call him David because his mother calls him David. That's important when your mommy calls you David. Have you interviewed other mayors, other administrators? I know you're a man of experience with Vancouver employment. Have you spoken to any of them in light of this discussion we're having?
Well,
As to whether or not they're happy with it, whether or not it's a pain in the neck, stressful, doesn't get things done, or it's very successful.
I think the meeting twice a month works for the communities that are doing it. The effort is concentrated. I think from a staff perspective, it's a long day, but it's already long once a week anyway, because the time from 5 until 6 isn't very long. Some of us might go home and grab a bite to eat. Others we eat late dinner in a very unhealthy way probably, or get a zippy really quick. They're actually very good. But so in terms of the meeting frequency, I think in every community, whatever that community lands on works for that community. I'm not aware of colleagues who are very concerned about the approach that their community takes in terms of the frequency of their meeting. I am confident that the utilization of workshops and whether there's a packet or not, that the approach that we're talking about this evening is the more common approach, and there's probably a reason for that, just in terms of policy development at councils. So, please don't. I greatly appreciate, and I'm sure I speak for the team, that we greatly appreciate your thoughtfulness and consideration about impacts to the staff in terms of the frequency of the meetings and the like. But we do serve at your pleasure. So, but I do believe that it will be less burdensome in terms of taking staff away from their families to meet twice a month as opposed to 4 times. And I know that's something we value in this community.
And live football.
I don't know when Mitch's team starts, but they start pretty soon tonight. But there's football every Monday night, so it doesn't matter what we do. So, at the end of the day, what will work best for the council will work best for the staff, and we're here to support you and to serve you. And I think I'd like to see the council be willing to give it a shot to try a couple times a month. And the approach that we're looking at, as with everything else that we do, it's not something permanent that can't be changed. It's your meetings. So if there's a sense that something is lost that we currently have now, or that we're not providing what's adequate for you, we can make those subtle adjustments or a large adjustment in terms of our meeting times and be flexible and adaptable. But I would think a healthy time to kind of test run it would be, over a period of months, to kind of get a feel for the different seasons of things that we do. And I think it's important to ensure that we provide reports and updates. And I think when we have the approach where we're not doing that dress rehearsal or that formal walkthrough, that your staff will be more facilitated to do that and have some time to prepare those types of things. And I'd like to see some regular frequency of some of the key folks coming in and certain types of information that present. Jen brings the finance updates. That's a statutory provision, but they're important, and I know they're helpful for you. There's other information as well. We have our committees too, so there's nuances there, and that's not very formalized, how we utilize our committees, and each committee kind of charts its course with that. And I think that's fine. I think that's good. I like that. I like the informality of that. It allows committees to kind of find the way that works for them without major constraints on how those function. But at the end of the day, we serve at the pleasure of the council. I would hope for some, I think what I'm hearing is that there may be at least a majority of the council that's interested in trying a 2 meeting per month frequency. That is not, definitely don't hear consensus on that. But based on that feedback, would prepare a draft resolution that would make that type of a change in your rules. I heard, I believe, consensus around the notion of the workshops and a willingness to make an adjustment with some concerns and some caveats, and I'm aware of those. There's some details, though, that we don't have nailed down, and I don't know that those have to be in your rules, like the dinner and all of that, but we do have to specify the time. And I kind of like the idea that a couple council members raised of a little bit later starting time and being a little more efficient around the dinner time, but we would have to take care of that for you then, I think, somehow, because we couldn't expect you to leave here, find your way somewhere, eat, and be back in a half an hour. Mitch actually made a comment to me in passing here that there's nothing that would say that as appropriate on any given meeting night, if it was really necessary for you to do justice to an issue that we were talking about in workshop, but it got time for the meeting and time to break to eat so that you could be refreshed for the meeting. If it really was necessary, you can always come back in workshop after you've conducted your business and chat some more on an issue. Particularly if the meetings are very, efficient. If the actual meeting agenda isn't heavy. But anyway, that's just another thought. So I think the only thing I don't really have a sense of direction on is the start time and the break length.
Jennifer?
Yep. Well, I'm definitely willing to give this a try, and I'm willing to support it, with all of the discussion that we've had. I definitely would recommend the roundtable discussion set up for a workshop. As Councilman Greenlee mentioned, it was, I think it was more conducive to collaboration and discussion and, just integrating ideas more than anything and just kind of deconstructing maybe a proposal that's brought forth. It's just a little more informal, and I think you get some more true feelings rather than a more formalized setting like this. I don't know what the normal schedule is for department heads. Are they 9 to 5, or when do they normally work?
It's across the board.
Okay, so they're not 9 to 5 per se. Okay, well, I do miss that bit of department head update discussion time. When Paul brought it up, now that I'm remembering, yeah, that was actually really awesome. I would like to see that come back. I don't know if we need to, maybe put it at the first few minutes of a workshop, or if that's even possible to do. Maybe we would have to start at 4:30 if...
It's not impossible to do. The subject of department heads, the subject of the food that was here, all that kind of stuff previously, were edicts from the previous mayor, who required that every department head be at every meeting regardless whether they had anything on the agenda. Mm-hmm. I believe, but it's your meetings. My belief is I would rather have those people home rather than sitting around on the off chance that somebody's going to have a question for them, or that they might have something going on that they're going to bring forward to you just
but I recall,
out of the blue.
I recall that, unless the department head had something up for discussion that night, they never all stayed. They would come and they would give their report maybe at the beginning of the meeting, and then they would leave.
Yeah, my belief is, and what I've been told, is that they were all required to be there. The reason for the food is the former mayor also decided that the department head meetings were going to be on those Mondays immediately before those meetings. So the food wasn't for you all. The food
Wait
was
a
because
minute.
staff basically wasn't allowed out of the building
Oh,
after 3
goodness.
o'clock in the afternoon. And the food came in as a concession to the staff to be able to get themselves something to eat between going through those department head meetings and then your council meetings, whether they were workshops or not. So, again, personally, I would be reticent to ask those department heads or require those department heads to be here for every meeting regardless. There are, somewhere we probably need to find somewhere where we can skew that line a little bit, because I believe it probably is helpful for you to have other opportunities to talk with them and do those types of things back and forth. I know the hours that they work now, and for the most part, we don't stay anywhere close to 40-hour weeks. So again, to require them to all be here regardless, because we're here, to me, is somebody's on a power trip. So
Seems like we could maybe rotate a department in on a once-in-a-while basis.
I mean,
if,
obviously, you're still going to have department heads that are going to be doing presentations at
Right.
different times for different things that are coming up. Are they going to be prepared to really give something to you every 2 weeks? I doubt it. I mean, what they
Wouldn't
do
need
is
something that
daily
frequent.
stuff, and then the programs and the planning that we're doing. Now, if I were to tell them, you're going to be there every 2 weeks, and you're going to have at least 5 minutes worth of content, I guarantee you, every one of our department heads is going to make up 5 minutes of content, and they'll be here every 2 weeks. Is that going to be the best use of their time in doing that? I don't believe it's going to be, but.
I have a couple of comments. One, I think there would be a value of us having the department heads at least once a month at a workshop so we could see them and talk to them and ask them questions, because we are out there with little information unless we read it in the paper. The other thing, is there a cost difference? I don't know what, you said the other night that a meeting didn't cost much, but if you all are juggling time, does that make a difference in whether we do it twice a month or once a week?
The only costs related to a meeting are utility costs, in terms of your senior staff or exempt staff. So we are committed to get the job done, whatever it takes.
Okay.
Of course, we want to be a reasonable employer for our senior staff, but yeah, so the more we meet in the evening and the lights are on, those incremental types of costs, but significant foundational types of costs are not an issue for the meetings. I think it would be good to find a way to find a nice balance between ensuring that we're engaging our senior staff with the council at a frequency that is appropriate and helps you feel the level of connection and information that helps you to be the most effective as you can be as a council member, and balancing that with evenings and family time for our senior staff. And I think there's some ways that we could try to strike that balance, and it may not necessarily be a twice monthly verbal update, mandatory attendance type context. There may be a combination of some frequency, some reasonable frequency of check-in, as was mentioned. There's the possibility of some written updates as well. I know that is a practice in some communities. And, the written word is as good as the written word is, but nonetheless, it does provide some information. So, I think we could, as an administration, commit to try to strike that balance for you and take that into consideration as we're moving forward and try some different things.
Yeah. When staff appears at these council meetings that go, say, more than a couple hours into the evening, do you have a policy of giving them comp time where they can take an hour off here and there for doing that?
Only Rose, and she
Yeah.
adjusts her schedule throughout the week. Department heads, no.
Not in sort of a one-for-one basis, if you would, but as exempt employees, there isn't a punching of the clock, if you would. So there is some adaptability and some flexibility, but we don't keep a sort of a one-for-one type of relationship there. But staff has some flexibility.
I'd also like to add that, I'd like to see department heads too, but, if we do commence at 4:30, that could be the time for department heads to come and address us, and they're not being, inconvenienced by not getting home on time if we do that. So that's one possibility. And if I heard you right, Administrator Scott, the staff that does have to come to council meetings, their preference would be twice a month and not every Monday. Is that
Yes, I
correct?
think it's safe to say that was the consensus of the team. Yeah.
Not the only, did you?
Right.
Did you?
It was all Mitch.
We're
This
all
was
looking at you,
Mitch's
Mitch.
idea. No.
The whole staff is looking at Mitch.
It is
Yes.
important, it is important to me that that's, what staff would prefer, because this is their life too. I know, I'm in a position where I'm in a similar situation for Vancouver, and I would love it if they could go to twice a month meetings, but that's just not in the cards for them.
I think the primary change into the teams, into the staff, and going to the twice a month, and this adjustment in the workshop approach will be in what we have to do to prepare for those 4 meetings and putting all of those packaged together. I think Rose will see some additional time in her portfolio to be able to serve you, and I think someone like Mickey, who works with the Public Works team and does quite a bit of that work as well, I think she would see some real benefit to that. On the department head level, our current practice is when you have an item that you come, you're always welcome to come. And as you're observing, now Mitch personally likes to stick around even though his item's done, and he's always welcome to do that, right? And even when the Raiders are playing. So
What a guy.
I think that would be the primary savings. Councilman would be with Rose and with Mickey and some others as we are preparing for meetings. But I do believe it was the consensus of the senior staff that twice a month was an approach they were very interested in pursuing.
Other thoughts, comments?
I'd just like to state that I basically would support what you put forward, Administrator Scott, excuse me.
I have to say the title and then look at the name. Just doesn't flow.
Okay, a couple of points I want to make sure and make. I know Dave had in his presentation, and Councilmember Shoemaker mentioned it as well, the commitment from the administration that we would not bring items forward to you that had not been workshopped and you hadn't had ample time to discuss. Just the caveat that sometimes things happen, and things are going to come to you very late, and we're going to ask you to take action on things. So that's not to say that this is going to be a perfect scenario, because we haven't found that yet. But yeah. Also, a reminder to council that you certainly always have, these are your meetings, and you certainly always have the opportunity to bring up, whether it's a council meeting or whether it's a workshop meeting under council comments, items that you would like to bring forward, whether they're discussion items for that evening, whether they are things of, could we for a future meeting schedule this, or any of those type of things. We are certainly open to doing that. Not only open to doing that, we will do that. Again, they're your meetings, and they need to be respectful and certainly responsive to what you have going and or what you would like to see us doing. I want to caution on a couple things, though. One of them, and Paul, I kind of get where you're going from in regards to the the little bit of informality with the workshops. I don't know that we ever want to get to, although if you all decide and tell me that's the direction we're going, we'll go that way and see where it goes. I don't know that we want to get into a workshop where we have open-ended discussion time things, whatever they happen to be, with the public that's here that evening. Not that I don't care about what the public thinks, because I do, but I can see those becoming, well, you couldn't schedule enough time for those meetings. And it would just morph until some point we just cut it off because we're out of time, period. And I don't know how productive that would be. So I would still see us in those workshops having an agenda to get through and make sure that we've got some structure to it. I think we would really need to talk with the department heads on how we can structure their time. You know, that again, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we've got a department head meeting. And I know when I sit in on those, and I'll have little questions back and forth and whatnot, that meeting will not end before 11 a.m. tomorrow. I'm only one. We add 7. And I'm not convinced that that's the way to do that and to be able to keep that time in there. Again, you could easily burn through an hour and a half of just discussions that are extremely meaningful and that you will get a lot of information out of with department heads. But all of this information we won't necessarily get to, so. I mean, even if we hold them all to 5 minutes, there's a 35-minute portion of the meeting, and that doesn't include any time for questions, answers, or other items for them, so. Okay, Joe?
Well, I know he wants to address what you just said, so
Yeah,
I'll let him go first.
When we had our regular 2-hour workshops, in fact, there was no public comment period. When I meant about public at the table was we might invite someone who was a community member to talk about something very specific. It was not general public comment that ran in an unlimited way. They were there to give testimony, in effect. And other than that, during workshops, there wasn't a public comment period. And similarly, in a department head meeting, that's a discussion meeting and that's not what the department heads were there to do on our workshops. It was more a quick report. And you may ask specific questions, but it wasn't, well, gee, tell me everything you know about wastewater treatment. It was, okay, we're going to build a building, we're going to build a shop building down there, or there's going to be some changes to this down there, and then you were done with it. It wasn't.
And that, quite frankly, are what our department head meetings are now. It's pretty much that opportunity for them on a weekly basis to get up to speed individually with each other on just what their projects, what the hot buttons are, that type of stuff, and for Dave and I to be in those conversations and know where they're going.
But the other thing that the kind of broad discussion that we did get into was I was in on the tail end of the downtown revitalization, and there was a whole lot of talk about what was the vision for downtown and how could we encourage that. And similarly, that was also at exactly the time that Riverwalk was coming up at the port. And so there was a lot of discussion about that as to how we wanted to respond to the things that were going on down at the port. And to just have council sit around and talk about those things, I think, isn't very useful. You really have to have a fairly structured input especially from planning on those particular issues before you can have a good discussion. And so I'm really not looking for council to sit around in a bull session. It was much more structured than that. with real presentations and a topic that you stuck to.
Okay, Joe?
If there are issues like budget season, or maybe there's something major going on in our city, we can always add another meeting in a month. I think we need to just keep that in mind. If we find something's overloading our schedule, we have the freedom to add another Monday. So I just want to say that for the record, I'm good. If we're having to roll up our sleeves and get some work done, let's do it. And well, however long it takes. Remember you saying that at the night of the appointment, we're going to stay here till it's done, you know, kind of thing. So
Well,
we're hard-working folks. We're willing to do it.
And I'm kind of probably badly trying to convey that same message in here. We're still gonna be here till we're done. I just want all of you to be realistic in how we fill that time in there. Because in the end, it is about you all and making sure that you've got the information that you need. My last point is on that directly. Regardless whether we're putting packets out, not putting packets out, doing presentations, all that type of stuff, we're certainly still committed to making sure that you get all of the information and or follow-up questions and additional information and that type of stuff. This doesn't change any of that whatsoever in making sure that you arrive at the best decisions that you can on issues. So, anything else from council? Dave, do you have a direction? Sort of?
I think so. I mean, I think there's still council discussion to have on exactly when it starts, and I'll do my best job to bring a proposal that will be a starter for that conversation with a draft resolution at a workshop to be held soon, in 2 weeks. In 2
We
weeks.
could be at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close. And then maybe if there's something for you to see specifically as a council, then you can, and then you have some time to think about it too until we meet again.
Dave?
I think the direction from the council was to try it, but be flexible, because there may be some feedback.
Yes. And feed me.
Okay, we are at that point in the agenda, our second opportunity for anybody in the public that would like to address council. Good evening, Mr. Seacrest.
My name is Maury Seacrest. I live here in town. I have one quick question, and that is, I've heard the packets mentioned more than once. Is there any way that a member of the public could look at the packet before the meeting? How
You
would I
bet.
do that?
3 different ways. One, we always have packets outside on the table the previous week. Typically by Thursday, Friday at the very latest, the packets are all out there in hard copy. They also go up on our website, so the agendas are there and also the packet detail as well, which when we talk about the Dropbox and that type of thing that the council members have on their iPads, it's kind of the same thing. It's just an area that we put those into specifically for them. And then beyond that, I would bet, Rose, we have other individuals that we send those out to electronically every month or every meeting as well. So if you've got the ability, Maury, to get those through email, we certainly, at the same time that we let the council know that the agendas are there and they're coming through and that type of stuff, we have the media and a few other folks that we send those out to electronically as well. So we could certainly do that.
Great, thanks.
You could print whatever you wanted or just look through them or whatever you care to do.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other members of the public that would like to address council? Good evening, Kathy.
First time. Kathy Morton Greenlee, 2698 North L. I've been to lots of meetings. I chair lots of meetings. I've sat on lots of boards. I've been through all this conversation many times. In the audience, I heard a lot of individual, personal agenda. I didn't hear you talking about the community. I didn't hear you talking about Washougal. I heard your individual schedules, and I want to challenge you on that. I've chaired a ton of things. If you're going to get the work done, you've got to have continuity, and you've got to know your job. So address that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Rochelle Ramus, 1247 Northwest 30th Avenue in Camas. Drew Snyder and I are here this evening representing the West Columbia Gorge Humane Society. Those of you who do not know who we are, we're actually a no-kill independent shelter, nonprofit, down on the dike. We have both a cat and dog building. We take care of approximately 150 cats at any given time and between 15 and 20 dogs, either through our shelters or through our volunteers in a foster program. And this September 22nd, we have our annual dinner auction. This is our biggest fundraising event over the year that raises funds to help take care of these animals, and most of that money goes to the medical treatment. That's anything from surgeries, teeth extractions, you name it, we've seen it. And so I just want to make sure everyone's aware that we're here and drop these off for you if you're interested in attending.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
You said it's the 22nd, Saturday?
It's September 22nd at the Chemist
Thank
Meadows
you.
Golf Course. And
Already signed up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one.
Thank you.
Awesome, Drew, give you one. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Anyone else that would like to address council?
Can I ask
Joe's got a question.
the price of the tickets?
$60.
$60. I don't see it here. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's $60
$60.
for the ticket, and that's, starts at 5:30. There's wine, dinner, and it's a plated dinner, and then the live auction. And our MC is Rod Hill.
Thank you.
Rod did a great job the time that I've been.
Under Mayor's report, I've got just a couple things for you. One, a reminder, tomorrow morning we do have the 9/11 ceremony over in Camas between the City Hall and the library. Those of you that can make it, it's not a long ceremony. In the past, it's been 15 minutes or so and it's done. So if you've got the ability to be there, that would be wonderful. Also, if there are any council members who are available that might be going tomorrow evening out to Grove Field, I know Tom Anderson and Barbara Curry are looking for a ride out there for the dinner and the ceremony out there. So if anybody is available to take them, if you could let me know. I know Annie and I will not be able to be there tomorrow evening. And I've made calls to a couple of folks to see if we couldn't arrange a ride for them, but I have not been successful so far. So there is, I will be bringing forward next week on the agenda a committee appointment for your confirmation of Maury Seacrest to our salary commission. We have an opening on the salary commission that we've advertised now twice. Specifically this last time around for the other council candidates that we recently interviewed. We sent that out specifically to them as well. Mr. Seacrest was the only one who responded to that, and we'll have that information in your packets for next week as well. So that will be coming forward. And then the last item I have in regards to this last week, I know a number of you, I think all of you on some, not all of you on others, were getting emails in regards to some of the fast traffic and unsafe traffic and that type of stuff that we have. And I know some council members had commented back, and we certainly, from a staff level, both from Public Works and from Public Safety, we certainly respond back to those, and I'll ask those department heads as they do that to make sure that they include the council in there so that you know what the responses are going out to them. I know there are some meetings coming up, and we can see if we can't get some staff there for you as well at those to kind of backstop that. That is one of those issues that will just never go away, not for this community, not for anybody else's. There is no physical way to hire enough police officers, have enough radar guns, have enough radar traps, have enough red light cameras, any of that to take care of the traffic concerns that we have, and it is by far the #1 item that we get. I just want to make sure that as you respond back to citizens and that type of stuff, you might touch base with department heads first, because we are very confined in what we can do on those items, other than enforcement, and we just do not have enough bodies to have them in all of those places. Right now, up on top of Norway is the hot spot. You know, last week it was Sunset Ridge, it's Lookout Ridge, it doesn't end. But that's part of our job, is to take care of them. I want to make sure that you don't set yourselves up for any disappointments as you go through, as I've experienced in the past, of thinking that things are pretty simple. We should just be able to do a couple things and take care of it, and then find out that we don't even have the ability to do that, even if we wanted to. So, anyway. Items from council. Joyce?
This is just for information. The Vancouver Sheriff's Office will accept unused prescriptions, and it's hard to find a place nowadays where you can take leftover medications and dispose of them, and we don't want them in our drinking water. You know, we don't want them flushed. So they will take them at 707 West 13th Street in Vancouver, and I think that's important for people to know there is a place to dispose of medications, a safe place.
Yeah, I believe, do we not take them down at the PD as well?
That was my understanding, that between PD and fire is better equipped to take sharps, but PD will take meds.
We'll double check and let you know. I know the police department at one time, and I believe they still do, they don't turn somebody away if they come in to hand them in, have one of the lockers inside the evidence areas that are highly secured are set up for that. And I think they just send them over to the county when the county's doing a massive burn of illegals.
Yeah, okay.
So
Okay.
we'll find out.
We'll verify
We'll
that
find
then,
out.
because that's important.
Other items from council. Connie, Joe?
Got to enjoy Camus's park, Fallen Leaf Park, on Sunday afternoon yesterday. Our church had a church picnic there. It was a great spot. It's been redone, nice little entrance for the road. Great barbecue there. I don't know who invented that barbecue, but it's really cool. But the purpose of this comment is they had a sand volleyball court, and it was the most popular event of the entire day. We had 4 teams just rotating and competing. It was a blast. So I don't know who in our city of this parks, Madam Joyce, she raises her hand. And those are the kind of things that I'd love to see over at Captain Clark Park and all around town, things that are easy, shouldn't be too expensive. Shouldn't be. Look at that face.
I know.
2 posts in the ground and throw some sand down. Okay, what are the expenses? What is it?
Oh, you don't even want to know.
No?
No, we, seriously, we had, as I was informed earlier this year, our parks manager actually had to sign off for WCIA, our insurance agency, I'm not even sure what it was. We basically ensured that we would not place anything in our parks that was not properly engineered and constructed by construction companies that were in the business of doing that. So at this point, if the Lions
I'm gonna
Club wants to
talk to
come
Scott
in and
Higgins.
donate to build an entire play structure of something that is overbuilt everything else, according to WCIA, we are not to allow them to do that. Even if we have Mr. Scott go through and over-engineer that thing as a structural engineer and stamp it, and then we overbuild it, we are not allowed to do that.
We could hire
So-
someone to build it.
So even, we would, but even our own staff are not allowed to do that. So even something as simple as,
Sand.
gosh, let's go take, 2 8-by-8-inch posts and cement them into the ground with 55-gallon drums of cement so they'll never move,
Never.
and attach some bolts to them. My understanding is that we can't do it.
Well, we can't do it ourselves, but we could probably
We can
consider
hire
that
a
as part
company
of
to
our.
engineer it
Yes,
and
that's
build it.
probably where I was headed with that.
Yep.
Hoping that we could just keep adding more to our parks because they're so fun.
No, your point's well taken. And that is just an absolute gem that Camus was able to get after,
Yeah.
after all those years. All that
Sure.
was put together by the mill employees in the mill themselves. And the mill employees built most of what's up there
Really?
themselves. They're under the same constraints.
And I got to experience the Columbia River at its lowest that I've ever seen over Labor Day. I felt like I was in a new land. All those land barges, and I almost walked across the river to the island. It was such a blast to go out there and enjoy that. So I'm just so glad we have the best place on the planet.
Dave?
Two items of interest for the general public. We have a Washougal public Public Safety Committee, thank you, oh boy. Public Safety Committee, next Monday, the 17th at noon at the Washougal Fire Department Training Room. And we have a pretty light agenda for that one. And we have a Regional Fire Authority Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 25th at 5:30 in the Camas City Council chambers. And the public is invited to both meetings. Thank you.
I just want to mention on September 22nd, Eagle Scout Spencer Bradley is earning his Merit Award. They're going to spread gravel for a path in Eldridge Park, and anybody that wants to lend a hand can. It's at 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And he came and made his presentation to the Parks Board, and is a very nice young man working hard for his badge.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Brett?
I heard what Kathy Morton Greenlee, it's the first time I ever heard her called that, by the way, had to say. She's left, I guess. But, you know, I have some agreement with her about, you know, we need to think about the public first in this, you know, consolidating our meetings to twice a month. I don't know that the public will necessarily be impacted by going to twice a month, but I didn't hear a lot of traction for my idea of having a Saturday retreat, you know, once a quarter or something like that, just to have an in-depth discussion with the public. Is there any interest in that? I mean, that would be, to me, that would be more efficient, an efficient way to engage the public, because we have such constraints on getting all our business done on Monday night, and there's not enough time. I'd be willing to devote a Saturday.
I'd join you on it.
I would too.
I'd go along with that.
I would as well.
I think our retreats, workshops, like we had that presentation over the community center the other week, it was so excellent. I would be game.
And then the only other thing I have to say is thank you for enduring my tooth removal this afternoon. I made it through, only on one Vicodin, so.
Paul?
I can say this now, Kathy's left.
It's
I
being
also,
recorded.
frankly, I didn't say anything, but I'm a little concerned that, you know, we go to 2 meetings a month is all. Attendance is not required at workshops. It's only at meetings. And for what we get paid to now be working hard to decrease our workload, boy, that's uncomfortable.
That might be one you want to wait and see if you actually decrease your workload.
I just want
I
to
don't
say we're
believe
not
you're going
decreasing
to.
our workload. We're just
I don't believe
combining
you're
it.
going to.
That's not the intent, and never was.
Any other items from council? Okay.
Just a reminder that the Compassion Clinic is this coming Saturday at Bethel Church, where they have free medical exams. And I'm not sure if the dental is coming this time around, but it's this Saturday.
Hours are?
Ooh, I believe it begins at 10. And there's childcare and there's food, lots of things. So spread the word.
Councilmember Freeman, I wasn't able to attend the Washougal Community Coalition meeting.
Neither
Were
was
you,
I.
You weren't able to either? Okay. I was just curious to know if they mentioned anything about the Community Service Day that's coming up on the 22nd.
I did.
Oh, did you? Oh, great.
I did go, and mostly what they're going to do is not only is the Eagle Scout thing, but the whole, all of the Washougal parks are going to have litter pickups, and the community coalition, Washougal Community Coalition, basically said, if you're not committed somewhere else, let's all go to Sandy Beach.
Sandy? Okay.
And that's the 22nd?
Also
Saturday?
the same day as the West Columbia Gorge Humane Society fundraiser, which I highly recommend. It is always a fun night. And Rod Hill is amazing. He has actually been the MC for several years now. 5, 4? I don't know. Lots. Every year. Every year, yeah. They've had it in several different places, but I really love it at Camas Meadows. It's very convenient, and it's a little more local than the former Vancouver location. So tomorrow night, I will be at a school board meeting, so unfortunately I won't be able to go to the feed and the special ceremonies over in Skamania. And then I have a Washougal Schools Foundation meeting Wednesday night, and band night rentals for equipment on Thursday night. And so going out of town on Friday, so a busy week. I have relatives coming in Wednesday night from Texas, so it's going to be a busy week for me too. But yeah, and you know, next week, crazy busy as well. The meeting that's been going around and those emails, is that a set thing, the Forest and Riverview communities? We've been getting all these emails.
For Riverview?
For the speeding issue?
Oh, is that Riverview up there? Yes, it's going to be the 18th.
Right, that's my daughter's birthday, so unfortunately I will not be able to attend.
Wednesday the 18th.
I believe there might already be 2 council members going. Okay.
I know I'm going to be there.
Okay. If 4 attend,
The
of course, then
18th
there you
is a
have the
Tuesday.
quorum issue.
Tuesday's 18th.
The 18th is a Tuesday.
Then it's Tuesday the 18th, excuse me.
Well, I'm out of town for the AWC State Candidates Forum.
Okay. All right, so I will not be attending that either, so just FYI. Thank you.
And then the legislative conference the next day, so.
Any other items from council?
I just wanted to mention one thing, is it this Friday that they're showing the Weight of the Nation movie at Crown Park?
Yes.
That's an interesting night if you're interested in public health issues. That's a short little movie, but there'll be people from Kaiser and several other health organizations to talk. And of course, it's part of the Camas and Washougal on a Diet that both mayors are working very hard on.
Some of the time. Connie Cho?
I wanted to ask what time the community service day starts. Do you know?
The city's one start at 9 a.m. I know there's another group that's planning on meeting at Washougal High School starting about that same time as well, and I'm not sure exactly where they're headed yet. We got a lot of different folks that are taking part on that, so.
Great.
In a lot of different
Okay.
places, but I believe everything that we've got in the city all starts at 9 a.m. There are posters in both windows, and it's up on our website
Okay,
as well.
great. Thank you.
You bet. Any other items? If not, we're adjourned.